Hey YouTube, Dawson Ryder here. Welcome to my review for the Hurricaneger 20-year anniversary special, as well as a little mini review at the beginning of the Don Brothers Hurricaneger sort of little mini crossover movie they did. That came out quite a while ago. I didn't cover it in my Don Brothers series review, or this is gonna bother me, or in, it's still not perfect, but anyway, or, you know, on its own, because to be honest, I didn't really want to watch it. That side of Toku is probably my least favorite thing, and I just didn't want to watch it. But after I watched the special, I figured, you know what, let me check it out, see if there's anything this adds to the overall narrative for the review and stuff like that. And it was pretty much exactly what I expected. You know, it's harmless. I'm not going to get mad at it. It's silly to get mad at this little special that is for Sentai fandom's enjoyment in Japan. It's just not my cup of tea. It's exactly what you'd expect. You know, it's a little bit of a lead into the plot with them chasing one of the gems they're chasing in the movie. It leads into the villains getting it in the movie. It's the core three Hurricangers as well as the new assistant character to Ouroboros making an appearance. They primarily interact with Oni's sister as she's trying to find inspiration for her new manga, and there's some funny, amusing bits in there, some annoying ones, and of course, Don Momotaro has to show up and, you know, do his bit and fight alongside them a little bit at the end. And there's some fun moments in there. You know, it's still nice to see the Hurricaneger cast, see them interact. It's nice to see some Hurricaneger action, which actually there was almost arguably more primary Hurricaneger action in this little mini-sode than there was in the movie, which is kind of weird. But also hearing the theme, you know, I don't really listen to Sentai themes much, almost not at all anymore, but I actually did like Hurricaneger's theme, so that was nice to hear. So it was basically what you'd expect. It just, I'm glad I watched this after so I could sort of keep it separate, because one of the things I liked about the Hurricaneger movie was it was just self-contained, this nice little grounded story about celebrating that the cast is returning that had nothing to do with Toku team-up nonsense or the stuff they're doing now for like Kyoryuger's anniversary, putting them in King Oger. I much prefer it to just be its standalone little side movie without the nonsense of Toku's we're in the same universe, no we're not continuity. And I find it also highlighted for me that I wish the Don Brothers Zenkaiger special would have been something more, where they would have addressed like the shared universes, and like the Don Brothers never questioned that they transform into these random teams. Regardless, it wasn't for me, it wasn't my favorite thing, you know, even right down to when Don Momotaro meets Hurricane Red, and Hurricane Red's like, thanks for fighting with me, you're a good fighter or whatever, and then Don Momotaro like goes to punch him and he's like, huh, like, nah, I respect you, way. I hate that type of behavior. What a bunch of weirdos. What type of humans act like that? It actually just reminds me of the Fast and Furious movies where the villains are like, oh, you punched me in the face. I respect you now. I'm on the team. What do you need? Anyway, so yeah, I wasn't a fan of the prelude. I kind of just wish it wasn't existing for it, because I like to sort of see it, the special, as its own standalone thing. As far as the special itself, honestly, it was solid and enjoyable. It wasn't perfect. There was one main thing about the narrative that I had a little bit of an issue with, but I found it to be mostly solid and enjoyable. And it was just really nice to see the cast back. Like, as far as the positives, it was nice like how much of the cast they got back. They got, you know, the core five, you got Ouroboros, who I forgot how much I actually quite liked with the series. Like, just a little bit about my history with Hurricaneger. You know, it was actually the first series that I completed outside of when I started watching Geki Ranger, because when I started, at the time, there wasn't very many Sentais available. Mostly I could just watch chunks of them, like stuff like Zyuranger and Mega Ranger wasn't completed subbed that I could find, so I was only able to watch like 6 episodes, but Hurricaneger was like those old HK subs on Daily Motion, and I finished it probably not the best way. I probably need to rewatch it in full. I've been meaning to, but I probably should have watched new stuff first. But regardless, it's not one of my top tier favorites, but I have a soft spot for it because it was part of my early Sentai history, and also I found it to be a solid and enjoyable Sentai series, filled with likable, quirky characters, but also some good action and mythology and stuff like that. So it was overall really nice to see them back. They had some good chemistry and interactions. You know, one of the things I was like in the shallow end hoping for was to hear the Go Riders theme, because that's one of my favorite background tracks, and it showed up both in the special, you know, the Don Brothers special where they did a recap, but also when the Go Riders showed up in this, their theme played. That was awesome. So it was cool to see stuff like that. Also, superficially, the suits just look great in HD. I know we've seen some of the suits return in a bunch of the random team-ups, but just seeing them all together in full HD, because, you know, especially when they show some flashbacks in this, as well as in the Don Brothers one, it even reverts to that aspect ratio. It takes me right back to Daily Motion, and then to see them in crisp and clean HD looks so good. They're really well done suits, especially like the Go Riders. It was just really cool to see that. I also really liked the concept of the way they used the past characters to sort of highlight I guess, the themes and the story of the series about these two learning to work together. I thought that was overall pretty cool. I really like the power-up. I mean, I've talked about this since it was announced, but I think the power-up is really awesome looking. It's a great looking power-up. The power-up action is really nice. And yeah, it was still enjoyable and solid. My main... And also, I do like the villain concept. The concept of this villain, she was like the lover of the main villain, and she wants to grant her wish by getting these stones, which are like infinity stones, basically. But I just like the concept of how they tied that to... I mean, it's pretty much like really basic comic booky, you know, superhero-y, easy answer who this villain is. But I think it worked well in regards to the concept. And also, I just random observation. I know we still have humanoid villains with stuff like, you know, the ones in Dawn Brothers, or, you know, even most recently we had some in Kira Major and stuff like that. But whenever I see a humanoid-ish villain like this that reminds me of stuff like Vipera, I just feel like that feels like such a more regular thing in older Sentai. Again, I know we've had it in recent years, but I just always associate it more with like 90s, early 2000s Sentai and PR. But anyway, my main mixed aspect from the plot comes from... we basically followed the past versions of the characters. Like, it's the same actors, and they act the same. It brings to mind the Geo tributes, where you had, like, some of the returning cameos play, like, versions of their characters because they didn't have their memory, so there's a slight disconnect. It wasn't quite the same here because they're effectively the same characters, so you're still getting some of that same chemistry, but... And I know, literally it's the same actors there, but I would have rather had a plot somehow more involved with the actual characters themselves, especially for a 20 years after special. I was hoping to catch up more with them and their lives and seeing how they progress, you know, especially after hearing the premise of the Abba Ranger special, where it's going to be dealing with how the Abba Rangers fit into the world now. I didn't want them to do that same plot, but I think that we're going to get to catch up with the Abba Rangers in that respect of, like, where are they 20 years later? And outside of the fact that they're still Hurricangering, I just wanted a little bit more of that. I got what they were going for with the plot. It was fine, it was enjoyable, but I felt there was a little bit of disconnect with that sort of kind of catching up with old friends bit, because it felt like they were almost surrogates for other main characters that were their variants. I wish they would have just stayed in the past and mentored them more. Like, the fact that the last scene in this 20th celebration is just a new power-up form was kind of disappointing. I wish it was all of them fighting together. Like, he could still be wearing it. I think it would have been cool to see, like, them stay in the past and mentor them, and then have, you know, the present-day Hurricangers fight alongside their ancestors at the end. So you have all of them there, and then it kind of would have had this cool, almost meta context to the actors standing next to their suits. That sounds weird because I'm always complaining about suits standing next to each other, but this is different. Just kind of like, you know, the actor actually gets to be there with the suit that they've kind of embodied for the last 20 years on and off. I think that would have been cool and a more meaningful way, like a finale of them being like helping those past characters resolve a similar conflict they had as the Hurricangers and the Go-Rigers, and then, you know, fight alongside together. There was a whole plot of, like, why they couldn't stay or whatever, but I think that would have been cool to see them, like, all the actors with their Hurricaneger suits, you know, and just, it would have felt more meaningful than, like, here's a power-up going to their rando ancestor. Again, thematically, I think it had some enjoyable aspects, and it tied into Hurricanger's, like, story in terms of, like, you know, not literally the lore, but in terms of the story of those two schools getting to work together, but it just had me feeling a little bit of a disconnect that was a little bit disappointing. With that being said, it was still an overall enjoyable special. You know, it didn't make me angry or anything. It was a little boring at points. I felt like, and I never complained about this, but I felt like there wasn't a lot of Hurricaneger action. I just felt like maybe there was a budget, and that's why they had to come up with the reason of, like, well, I mean, there's always a budget, but, like, you know, they couldn't spend too much, so that was why there was the reason they couldn't stay in the past, and why most of the primary fight scenes were civilian fights during that era. So that was, like, a little bit disappointing as well. Like, I'm usually never one to complain about that, but for, like, the 20th anniversary special, it almost felt like a mini-sode concept stretched out into an hour, but I still did find it to be solid and enjoyable. 3 out of 5, I would say, for the score. Just solid and enjoyable. It is funny, though, like I said when I watched this, I said one of my favorite things about it was self-contained, away from the nonsense. Like, a lot of what this is, in regards to this special just being self-contained, represents when I can enjoy Toku stuff and Toku Returns, and then, like, the Dawn Brother stuff represents the stuff I hate, which is the forced, weird, crossover, shared, not shared universe. Quite honestly, again, it's harmless fun, and it primarily exists to basically just catch up any audience members that haven't seen Hurricaneger. Whether it's younger fans or older fans, you know, if they didn't want to watch all of Hurricaneger before the special, you can pretty comfortably watch that Dawn Brothers special and then this, and be able to enjoy it fine, as outside of some little references and Easter eggs or whatever, there's nothing major about, and then the only spoiler, to be honest, really, is that they destroy the big bad at the end. Spoiler for every Sentai ever, they're going to do that pretty much. So other than that, you can probably watch this special and then the Dawn Brothers lead in for, like, the, you know, cliff notes, and you can enjoy it on its own without having to watch the series, without, in my opinion, any major experiences about the series ruined. But that's about it for this one, guys. Let me know what you thought of the special in the comments as always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.